Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Ashish Sahejpal, Assistant Professor from University Business School, Punjab University Regional Centre, Ludhiana, Punjab. Today, we are going to discuss about module Competitive and Industry Analysis under paper Strategic Management. After completing this module, you will be able to understand number one, that is journal environment, the external environment, the competitive environment, concept of strategic group, and Michael Porter's 5 force framework. The environment in which business operates has a great influence on its performance. The success or failure of any organization strategy is based on the fundamental understanding of its external environment. The external environment of an organization consists of both a journal environment and competitive environment. The journal environment is often referred to as the macro environment and includes factors such as political environment, economic, social, and technological. It should be noted that any change in the journal environment has the potential to influence the organization competitive environment and will also have an effect that transit beyond the firm or specific industry. For example, Hitkari Potteries, a popular Bon China crockery brand till 2000, slowly lost ground to competitors like La Opla and Coral. This happened because the firm failed to scan the journal environment for signs of change, that is, the social change. The societal change underway was the change in the lifestyle of the potential consumer. With more and more number of women joining the workforce, the ladies were facing shortage of time for their household chores. Therefore, to strike a balance between their professional, personal, and family lives, these modern working women were looking for the crockery that was convenient to use, was unbreakable, chip resistant, and microwave safe. Hitkari failed to notice this social change in the journal business environment and has to face stiff competition from companies like La Opla and Coral that introduced ceramic crockery that would meet the emergent needs of the consumers. Therefore, it is important that organization scans the journal environment and identifies the factors that have the ability to influence or fundamentally change the industry within which they compete. Competitive environment. The competitive environment refers to the dynamic system in which an organization competes and operates. This system is generally referred to as an industry or a strategic group, where an industry is defined as a group of firms producing the same product or products that are close substitutes, while strategic groups are the subgroups within an industry that have similar characteristics and compete on similar basis. The competition between the firm within a strategic group is greater than the companies that fall outside the said strategic group. For example, all the companies manufacturing the cell phone collectively represents the mobile industry, whereas the companies that manufacture smartphones, that is Android as operating systems, are termed as strategic group, as they compete on a similar technological platform when compared with the rest of the firms that manufacture first generation cell phones, that is Symbian as operating system. These groups have very little in common and therefore pay little attention to each other when planning for competitive moves. But the companies that manufacture smartphones, that is on Windows or iOS as operating system, however, have a great deal of commonality with the manufacture of smartphones, that is Android as an operating system. Consequently, the firms within these groups are strong rivals. However, there may be many different characteristics on which the strategic group can be distinguished from each other. That is, product quality, geographical coverage, service levels, etc. Hence, the concept of strategic group is helpful for the organizations to know more about their direct rivals and the basis on which the competitive rivalry is likely to take place within the group. Therefore, it becomes imperative for the organization to have an in-depth understanding of industry's competitive character as a part of external environment and to help them shape their future strategies. Porter's Five Force Framework. The Five Forces framework is developed by Michael Porter and is the most widely used analytical tool for the assessing the competitive environment. The Five Forces analysis is undertaken from the perspective of both an incumbent that is already operating in the industry and a new entrant organization. The intensity of the competition within the industry is of at most concern for any organization. This framework helps the organization to determine this intensity of rivalry by examining the interaction of five competitive forces. It is therefore the combined strength of these five forces that helps the organization to determine the industry attractiveness and eventually the profit potential within a given industry. Figure 2 depicts Porter's five force model of industry rivalry. The five forces are: first, the threat of new entrant; second, bargaining power of buyers; third, bargaining power of suppliers; fourth, threat of substitute products or services; fifth, intensity of rivalry amongst firms in an industry. Onto the evaluation of the strength of these factors, a high force can be looked upon as a threat as it reduces profitability, whereas a low force would mean an opportunity that allows a firm to earn more profits. Threat of new entrants. Any industry that has the potential for growth and is perceived to be profitable tends to attract new entrants. These new entrants are the firms that are interested in investment to avail the opportunity that lies ahead within the industry. If new firms are able to come into an industry, the existing firms has to either share certain portion of the growing sales with a large number of competing firms or have to part off with some of its own market share. Either way, the existing firms have to face declining sales volume and revenues, ultimately leading to fall in incumbents' profits. The possibility that a firm enters from outside into an industry basically depends on two factors. The first being the barrier to entry, and the second being the expected retaliation. That is, strong reaction from the existing firms. A high entry barriers implies that there would be lesser likelihood for new firms to make an entry into the industry at the first instance, or will be abstained from establishing themselves before they may pose competition to the existing firms. Therefore, the higher entry barrier keeps the prospective entrants at a distance from an industry. Some of the possible entry barriers are brand benefits. Buyers are often attached to established brands, and to break through these well-placed brands become a challenge for the newcomers. The new entrants have to struggle and redefine their strategies so as to bring in change in the mindset of consumers. For example, Johnson & Johnson has ruled the market for last 60 years in the baby care segment. Companies like Marico, Dabur, Wipro, Himalaya have tried their hand at baby care, but with little success. This is primarily because, as far as baby is concerned, the mother do not want to risk experimenting with the new brands in the market. They want products which are completely trusted and safe. Johnson & Johnson products have thus established itself as a most trusted brand over the generations. Second, the access to distribution channel. Most exciting companies in FMCG and automobile industry are found to have a strong distribution channel, which is very difficult for new entrant to penetrate. For example, Lay's potato chips by PepsiCo India have a well-established distribution channel that has made its product available to the consumer at an arm's length. This has not only posed a challenge to products like Bingo by ITC, a conglomerate, but has also refrained the local players from establishing themselves in the industry. In the same way, Suzuki Maruti in the automobile industry has established a vast network of dealer and services center across the length and the breadth of the country, making it the most affordable car in India. Such deeply entrenched distribution network act as a barrier to entry for the new entrants. Third, the government policies. Government policies may also act as an entry barrier. The Exhibit 1 showcase that how the 520 rule of the government has restrained the Indian aviation companies from flying in international sky and making the new companies lose to the opportunity before the existing airlines in aviation industry. The 520 rule, Indian aviation industry. The Indian government introduced the 520 rule for the civil aviation industry in 2004. The rule banned the domestic carriers from flying in international skies until they had at least 5 years of domestic flying experience and a fleet of minimum 20 airplanes. According to the industry insider, Mr. Naresh Goyal, chairman of Jet Airways, one of the oldest private airlines in India, was the man behind the lobbying for the rule so as to prevent its competitor from flying abroad and restricting them from capturing the Indian international routes. In 2007-8, when no-frill airlines like Indigo, Go Air, and SpiceJet were busy consolidating their position at home, the 520 rule failed to provide any cushion to the domestic airlines to remain competitive. As a result of these policies, many of the airline companies that had business in India were unable to extend their flights to international destinations. Moreover, due to the resultant policy, the domestic airlines were too deprived from availing the opportunity of refueling their aircrafts outside India at times when the domestic aviation turbine fuel, that is ATF, prices were exorbitant. If one has to believe the industry sources, the Kingfisher airline acquired Air Deccan primarily because the latter had years of domestic flying experience that eventually empowered Kingfisher to gain permission to go international. The permission to fly abroad was the sole incentive for Kingfisher, though the two airlines had altogether different type of fleets. Organizational culture and ethos resulting to more challenges for Kingfisher than any synergy. With merger in place, Kingfisher went international, burned cash like never before, and finally became a debt-trapped airline. The 520 rule acted as a barrier to entry for the domestic airlines from going international. Meanwhile, the foreign airlines availed this opportunity and captured majority of the India's international routes. Switching costs are yet another factor. Switching costs are particularly important consideration. Switching costs are the expenses, financial or psychological, that a consumer incurs when she switches from one seller's product to another. In an industry where the switching cost is high, it becomes difficult for new entrants to establish or survive because the consumers are not readily willing to switch. These costs may be because of advanced technology adopted by the existing firm and the level of convenience that a customer experiences in owning a particular product, or maybe the strong brand association. Product differentiation. The corporation like 3M, that is known as the global innovation company, has differentiated its product in the marketplace and created high entry barrier through its high level of innovation. The people at 3M capture the spark of new ideas and transfers them into thousands of indigenous products and practical application that help makes people life better. 3M's office business is home to some of the world's best brands like Post-it and Scotch, etc. Economies of scale. The firm that operates at large scale tends to get benefits of lower production costs because of economies of scales. Over the years, an already established firm in industry might have attained the scale of production, but a new entrant normally would have to start its operation from a smaller scale. This in turn leads to relatively higher cost of production for new firms and adversely affects its competitive position in the industry. Capital requirement. High capital requirement may prevent the new entrants from making investment in an industry. For example, developing telecom infrastructure in rural India requires high capital investment as it involves greater logistical risk and also extends the time taken to roll out telecom services. The lack of trained personnel in the rural area to operate and maintain the cellular infrastructure, especially the passive infrastructure such as tower, is also seen as a hurdle for extending telecom services to the under-penetrated rural areas. Bargaining power of suppliers. Sourcing in any industry is amongst one of the most essential activities of a business. Organizations have a large dependence on the suppliers and latter has the ability to influence their profitability. The suppliers' decisions on prices, quality of products and services, payment and delivery terms are the various factors that influence buyers' profit potential and in turn determines the profit trends of an industry. Therefore, in the following given situation, a supplier or supplier group is said to be powerful. First, importance of supplier's product to buyer. When the supplier products are an important and integrate part of buyer's manufacturing process and its product quality, the bargaining power of supplier will be high. Taking an example of automobile industry in India, Sona Koya Steering Systems Limited is the largest manufacturer of steering system for the passenger car and utility vehicle market. Its customer largely includes all major vehicle manufacturers in India such as Maruti Suzuki, Toyota, Hyundai, Tata Motors, Mahindra and Mahindra, General Motors, and Mahindra and Rolt. Steering being a specialist component for the automobile industry and Sona Koya being the manufacturer of high quality precision steering enables Sona Koya to hold a high command as a supplier in the industry. Greater concentration among supplier. A highly concentrated industry is one which is largely dominated by few large firms. Such few firms hold greater control to influence the industry as the largest share of industry's output rests in their hand. This gives the supplier or the supplier group greater power over those who do business with them. Petroleum industry is one such suitable example. Importance of buyer to supplier group. In case the purchasing industry buys only a small portions of the suppliers group product, then the importance of the buyer to the supplier group will be less. For example, the tire industry, the sales of bicycle tire is relatively more important as compared to the automobile tires. Threat of forward integration by suppliers. A situation where the suppliers are capable of moving up the value chain and may think of doing a business that their buyers are already into puts the buyer in a disadvantageous situation. A recent example may be of Ranbaxy Laboratory, which has decided to move from manufacturing of bulk and formulation to retailing of drugs through its own chains of retail store and Fortis hospital pharmacies. High switching cost for buyer. In this case, the cost to the buyer of switching supplier is high because the supplier's advantageous position or by the nature of suppliers itself. Dear student, let us focus on another force of Michael Porter 5-force model, that is bargaining power of buyers. The buyer in an industry, individually or collectively, is supposed to have a strong bargaining power when they can force a reduction in the price of the supply or demand a higher quality of product and services, or is being able to seek more value for their purchase in any way. On the other hand, a low buyer bargaining power enables the supplier to pass the price increase to the buyer or make the buyer to accept the product and services of low quality at a high price. The bargaining power of buyer is increased in the following circumstances. The very first, the standard or undifferentiated products. When there is no differentiation in the supplies of products and services, the buyer pressurizes the suppliers on price rather than the features of the product, knowing that they can always find alternative suppliers. Secondly, the greater concentration in buyer's industry and buying volumes are high. When the number of buyers is few and the volume of purchase of any buyer is high, the buyer business gain more and more importance to that of supplier. For example, the cash and carry format of retail that enjoys aggregate demand exert massive pressure on its suppliers' margin. Threat of backward integration by buyers. It is yet another factor, a situation opposite to forward integration, which the suppliers attempt to do so as to have a command over the buyers. Here, the buyer is ordered to hold their position stronger in the market, may integrate the business backward, that is, close to the source of raw material. This will mean the buyer undertake the activities of manufacturing or distribution for which they have been dependent on suppliers till now. For example, a textile company may go in for backward integration. Accurate information of suppliers' cost structure. A customer who is more informed about the supplier cost structure is capable of negotiating with the suppliers. Whenever such customer notice a decline in the supplier cost, they too would negotiate a proportionate decrease in the prices. For example, in present times, when the fuel prices are deregulated or market linked, the consumer accepts the prices of public transportation too to fall proportionately with any decline in the prices of crude oil in international markets. Consumers' price sensitivity. The utilitarian customers are the one who seek value and generally are price sensitive. In an industry where the purchases are largely dominated by such customers, the buyers tend to gain advantage in its bargaining power. The threat of substitute products. A firm is not only exposed to the competition from within but also from outside industry products. These products may be close substitute of each other that apparently are different but satisfy the same set of customer needs. For example, as per the market research, it is estimated that the parents buy baby care products for their babies till the time they are 9.5 months old, after which they tend to use their personal care product on the children And this cross usage of non-baby brands has restricted the potential growth of the product in baby care category. Quoting another example of recent happenings where the bread makers were charged of allegation about the presence of carcinogenic chemicals in the product, the firm offering the substitute product, that is home appliances for making baked products at home, left no stone unturned to avail this opportunity. It posed a serious threat to the bread manufacturers. The company Glen advertised its product in the local newspaper to boost its sale. Through this advertisement, the company offered the benefit, fresh, hygienic, and convenient of baking the bread at home to the consumers, making it more attractive over the packed bread sold in the market. However, the competition from the substitute product depends primarily on the following factors: how attractive are the substitutes priced in the marketplace, whether the substitutes are able to provide the same level of quality and performance. Third, how straightforwardly the buyers can switch to the substitute. Competitive rivalry. When the firms in the industry exhibit a high level of rivalry, the profitability of the industry may be affected. Such rivalry may take the form of incumbents competing aggressively on the basis of product service prices, in response to which price cuts are commonly assumed by the rivals and ultimately lowering the profit for all the firms in an industry. Following are the factors that affect competitive rivalry in an industry. Dear student, let us now focus on factors affecting competitive rivalry. Competitive structure. The competitive structures refers to the size, the number, and diversity of the competitors in an industry. The different types of competitive structures have different implication for both incumbent and for new firms. Where there are few competitors and all are of similar size, there is likely to be intense competition as each rival fights for dominance. On the other hand, where there are few large companies or just one company, the intensity of the competition may range from a state of neglect to fierce. Like in telecom, the firms have collaborated with each other to share the burden of huge investment by having a common tower infrastructure. In such cases, the firm may also adopt a policy that is mutually beneficial to the firm in the industry. While in some other industry, there might be prevalence of cutthroat competition by way of pricing, delivery, advertising, after sale service, etc. Industry growth. When the industry growth is sluggish and shows no symptom of recovery, in those situations, the intensity of rivalry within the industry may increase. Then the last, the exit barriers. The exit barriers refers to economic, strategic, and emotional factors that limits the firm to exit from its business or industry even in times of low or negative returns. Economic factors could be high investment commitments to plants and machinery that has no alternative usage, deterioration of demand conditions resulting to excess capacity, high fixed exit cost. Strategic factor could be value chain integration or the linkage of different businesses of a firm, such as a firm may have been its own buyer or supplier, or its different businesses may have been sharing the common pool of resources. While the emotional factors could be the sentiments of the management attached to a business or their commitment towards the employees or other stakeholders like distributors, suppliers, etc. So dear students, we'll try to summarize the whole module. It becomes imperative for the managers to understand the immediate competitive environment alongside the journal environment, as it largely influences the business growth potential of an organization. Moreover, for higher diversified companies, the most fundamental issue in corporate strategy is to identify the industry or the line of businesses in which company should compete. Potter's five force framework helps us to identify and analyze the five competitive forces that outline an industry and explains why different industries are able to sustain different level of profitability. The overall attractiveness of the industry does not imply that every firm in the industry will enjoy the same profitability. With the help of this model, the firm are able to determine their strengths and on the other side try to overcome their weaknesses to achieve a profit above the industry average. Thank you very much.